Today we're putting the Hidden Leaf's Shinobi Academy on trial, the curriculum. It shaped many of the ninja we know and love in very different eras. So here's the question. Is the Naruto-era academy curriculum actually optimal? Or was it a bare minimum pipeline that only worked because Jonin mentors, clan training, and pure luck compensated for its gaps? And if the Boruto-era academy fixed it with a modern, broader program, did it create better shinobi? Or did it create a generation that's technically skilled but psychologically unprepared for what shinobi life really demands? We'll compare Naruto-era versus Boruto-era, what they taught, what they tested, and what kind of Jonin they produced. Then we'll ask what an actually optimal curriculum would look like. Let's start with the Naruto era, because it's easy to romanticize it. Old school Konoha, chalkboards, wooden training posts, teachers like Iruka trying to keep 30 future child soldiers from setting the classroom on fire, sometimes literally. In Naruto's generation, students as young as 8 enrolled and spent several years learning both basic academics and entry-level shinobi techniques. The curriculum had 3 big pillars: general academics, practical ninja fundamentals, and village loyalty. The academics weren't nothing. They learned reading, writing, math, science, geography, the kind of knowledge you need for strategy, tactics, navigation, and even just understanding mission briefings. It was school, but with a ninja twist. Learn enough to function as an operative, not enough to become a scholar. Then the practical training, the 3 basic techniques: taijutsu, ninjutsu, and jinjutsu basics. Taijutsu was physical conditioning and sparring. Ninjutsu was chakra control, hand seals, and foundational jutsu like the transformation and clone techniques. Jinjutsu training, at least at academy level, leaned toward recognizing and dispelling illusions more than mastering illusion warfare. Students also practiced with shuriken and kunai, learned weapon handling, and got exposed to trap setting and basic fieldcraft. And culturally, the old curriculum came with old world baggage. Girls attended kunoichi classes that included cultural arts like flower arranging, framed as cover skills for infiltration and espionage. Even if you argue that's useful, the fact it was gender segregated says a lot about how the academy used to categorize shinobi roles. Then there was the ideological side, the shinobi rules: mental toughness, endure adversity, uphold duty to the village. The will of fire wasn't just a slogan, it was the moral backbone of the education. The academy wasn't simply teaching techniques, it was shaping loyalty. So far, that sounds solid. The issue isn't that Naruto's academy taught nothing. The issue is what it didn't teach and how it decided someone was ready to graduate. In Naruto's era, graduation required passing a written test and a basic jutsu performance exam, often something like performing the clone technique. Once you passed, you got your forehead protector, became a Jonin, and got assigned to a 3-person team under a Jonin mentor. And here's the key detail. The bar was relatively low. Students didn't need mastery of every skill. They didn't need to demonstrate reliability under pressure. They didn't need to prove teamwork. They just needed enough overall marks to clear the line. That's not a small problem, because the moment you graduate, the world can stop being school and become life or death extremely fast. Naruto himself is the perfect case study. Academically, he struggled badly. He failed the clone technique, the exact jutsu used as the graduation benchmark. And yet, he still graduated because he unexpectedly performed the shadow clone technique instead, which is objectively more advanced. That moment is iconic, and it's also a warning sign. The academy's standards were narrow enough that a student could be failing the expected baseline and still get through via an unconventional workaround. And the bigger problem is what the academy didn't teach until after graduation. Advanced chakra control, like tree walking and water walking, not taught in the academy. Chakra nature transformation, not taught in the academy. A lot of the truly practical, this keeps you alive in the field skills were expected to be learned after you were already a Jonin under a mentor. Now, an apprenticeship model can work. In fact, it's a classic way to train specialists. Teach the basics, then let mentors train the rest. The issue is risk management. In a world where missions can escalate without warning, delaying core survival skills is gambling with children's lives. Team 7 is the obvious example. They went from catching a cat to dealing with Zabuza and Haku fast. That's not rare bad luck. That's the ninja world being the ninja world. If your education system assumes a gentle ramp up, but reality doesn't provide one, the gap is paid for in panic, trauma, and casualties. So is the Naruto-era curriculum optimal? It depends what you think the academy's job actually is. If the job is to produce a large number of minimally competent Jonin who can be shaped by Jonin mentors, then yes, it's efficient. It teaches fundamentals, instills loyalty, and lets mentors and real missions do the hardening. But if the job is to produce mission-ready shinobi with a consistent baseline of survivability, judgment, and competence, then no. The old curriculum creates uneven outcomes. Prodigies thrive. Plan kids get private training. Everyone else depends heavily on the quality of their mentor and the luck of what missions they get early. Naruto succeeded despite the system, not because the system was designed to support him. Now let's pivot to the Boruto era, because this is where everything changes. After the Fourth Shinobi World War, Konoha gets something it's basically never had: sustained peace. The village modernizes rapidly. Computers, video screens, trains, and scientific ninja tools become normal. The shinobi world becomes more connected, more cooperative, and more modern society than constant Cold War. The academy has to reflect that, because the village itself isn't a pure military community anymore. So the academy program gets rebuilt, and the biggest change is philosophical. The academy becomes both a ninja school and a general school. In the Boruto era, students who don't pass the ninja qualifying exam can continue schooling on civilian tracks. Becoming a shinobi is no longer the only respected path. Kids can plan for other professions, and there's no stigma attached. That's a massive shift from Naruto's time, where it was basically expected that you become a shinobi. The old system funneled youth into military service by default. The new system recognizes a peacetime society needs engineers, researchers, builders, administrators, teachers, people who aren't carrying kunai on missions, but still keep the village alive. And for the ninja track, the requirements tighten. Good academics are required to graduate alongside ninjutsu ability. You can't brute force your way through on talent alone. A Naruto-type student who barely scraped by academically would have to improve, or he wouldn't graduate. That's controversial if you're thinking emotionally, because Naruto is the underdog story. But from a curriculum design perspective, it makes sense. Shinobi need literacy, planning, and broad knowledge. In a more modern world, being strong but clueless is an even bigger liability. Then there's the biggest mechanical upgrade. Boruto Era Academy pushes skills earlier. Advanced chakra control exercises like tree climbing and water walking become academy-level requirements. Scroll storage techniques, sealing items into scrolls, become part of standard training. And students can opt into electives like chakra nature transformation and basic medical ninjutsu while still in school. That changes what graduation means. In Naruto's era, graduation meant you can do the basics. Now go learn how to truly control your chakra and survive. In Boruto's era, graduation means you should already have the foundational control older genin had to learn after they were deployed. The floor rises. The average graduate is stronger, and we see that in practice. Boruto's classmates display elemental jutsu and advanced techniques at ages where Naruto's class was still struggling with the basics. Boruto himself shows wind release and lightning release before graduating. Many classmates already wield their family techniques with confidence. So if the Boruto Era Academy produces stronger students, doesn't that automatically mean the curriculum is more optimal? Not necessarily, because optimal depends on the environment you're optimizing for. And the Boruto Era is optimizing for peace. Let's break it down by the most important dimension: preparing students for shinobi life, combat, missions, teamwork, and functioning under pressure. On paper, Boruto's academy is better across the board. Earlier chakra control means less wasted time later. Scroll training improves mission logistics. Electives allow early specialization. Strong academics improve strategy, planning, and adaptability. Even the graduation exam becomes tougher. Instead of a simple do the clone technique, check, Boruto's class goes through multi-part exams that include written components and a practical scenario overseen by veterans like Kakashi. It's essentially a bell test integrated into graduation. Teamwork under pressure against instructors. In Naruto's era, Kakashi's bell test happened after graduation, when your team already existed. In Boruto's era, the academy itself is trying to filter for teamwork and stress performance before you're even deployed. That's a genuine improvement, but it comes with a catch: psychological readiness. Kakashi basically says it out loud. He criticizes the class for a lack of resolve. Too comfortable, too complacent, too unaware of what shinobi life can cost. In his view, they have skills, but they don't have urgency. And here's the problem: simulated danger can't fully replace real danger. It can test competence. It can expose attitude. It can force teamwork, but it can't recreate the moment you realize someone is going to die if you make the wrong call. That's the shock of real missions, and a peace-era generation doesn't naturally get it early. Naruto's generation had the opposite situation: less advanced training early, but a harsher world that forged urgency fast. Boruto's generation has a better curriculum, but the world hasn't forced that hardening yet. So Boruto's academy creates stronger genin, but it also risks producing naive genin. Now let's talk teamwork, because this is one of the weirdest inversions between generations. In Naruto's era, shinobi culture often leaned mission first, with emotional suppression baked in. Teamwork was not always automatic. Rivalries, trauma, ego, and doctrine all worked against it sometimes. Kakashi's bell test exists because Team 7 needed the lesson. Those who abandon friends are worse than scum. In Boruto's era, teamwork is basically default. These kids grew up hearing stories of the allied shinobi forces. They live in a village where unity is celebrated, where the Hokage preaches cooperation, where other villages aren't automatically enemies anymore. They naturally value friendship and coordination. So when the academy emphasizes teamwork, it's reinforcing an existing strength. That's good, but it also means the traditional "don't abandon comrades" lesson isn't the biggest gap anymore. The new gap is different: decisive action under fear. Because teamwork isn't always enough. Sometimes you need to act when you're scared. Sometimes you need to lead when everyone freezes. Sometimes you need to make a choice that hurts. A peaceful curriculum can accidentally skip training that muscle because daily life doesn't demand it. Now Dimension 2, moral development, handling power, loyalty, emotional growth. Both eras teach loyalty and the will of fire, but the meaning evolves. In Naruto's time, loyalty was largely village first, and the wider world carried mistrust. Rival villages were competitors at best and enemies at worst. The academy's worldview reflected that reality. In Boruto's time, loyalty expands outward. It becomes loyalty to maintaining peace between villages. The academy can openly teach inter-village cooperation as a virtue. Field trips and exchanges like visiting the Hidden Mist push students to see other villages as real cultures, not just threats. That's not a small thing. It's one of the strongest anti-cycle of hatred tools Konoha could possibly have. Teach kids early that peace is normal and that the other side is human. The ethical tone shifts too. Old shinobi rules carried a ruthless edge. Mission above all, endure without question, suppress feeling. Boruto's academy culture is more compassionate and rehabilitative. Teachers try to understand troublemakers instead of just punishing them. Family involvement is more direct. Students are prompted to reflect on motivations and goals, not just "do you want to be strong?" And the biggest moral upgrade might be choice. If kids can choose not to become shinobi and still have a respected path, you're less likely to produce resentful, trapped, bitter people who break later. A lot of Rogue stories start with someone feeling cornered by duty, by identity, by expectation. The Boruto-era academy quietly reduces that risk by giving people exits. But compassion needs a partner: resilience. If students never confront stress, fear, and failure in training, they still won't be prepared for the moment the world stops being gentle. And even in peace, the shinobi world still has threats that can erupt suddenly. Now Dimension 3, broader societal impact and modernization. This is where Boruto's academy is almost undeniably better for the village. In Naruto's time, the village was heavily militarized. The academy existed to feed the shinobi machine. Missions were economic lifeblood, security was constant, and training was about maintaining a force. In Boruto's time, demand for shinobi is lower. The village is richer. Technology is everywhere. So the academy adapts by producing people who can contribute even if they don't become frontline ninja. And because the village is modernizing, shinobi have to be more than just fighters. They have to understand tools, media, and a world where information travels fast. They may be peacekeepers, diplomats, investigators, and responders, not just combatants. So the curriculum reflects modern context, modern classroom equipment, broader education, and even international exposure. It prepares students for an interconnected world instead of a paranoid one. One subtle but important update is what seems to disappear: the old gender-segregated kunoichi classes. In Naruto's era, girls were taught specific cultural cover skills as if infiltration was a feminine niche, while boys drilled combat as the default. In Boruto's era, students trained together across the board: taijutsu, ninjutsu, tactics, implying the academy either made those social skills universal or stopped treating them as gendered at all. That matters for optimization, because it means every student can be trained for stealth, diplomacy, and information work, not just the ones the system stereotyped into it. It also means the academy can build mixed skill teams without assuming who will be the face, who will be the fighter, and who will be the support, which makes squads more flexible and realistic. But modernization introduces new ethical problems. The biggest one is technology as a shortcut. Scientific ninja tools can output jutsu. That's a revolution, and it creates a curriculum problem. If tools can do what training used to do, students need structured education on how to use tools responsibly, how to counter them, and how not to become dependent. Otherwise, you get two bad outcomes: kids who cheat themselves out of mastery, and kids who get blindsided by enemies with better tech. So here's the verdict so far. The Boruto-era curriculum is more comprehensive, more humane, and more aligned with a peaceful society. It produces stronger baseline shinobi and more useful citizens, but it also risks complacency and naivety. And it has to actively teach resilience and tech ethics, not just assume students will figure it out later. Now let's return to the core question. Is the Naruto-era curriculum actually optimal? It was optimal for throughput in a militarized village. It got kids to a baseline and relied on mentors and missions to finish the shaping. It matched an era where the village needed numbers and where the world itself hardened children whether the school did or not. But it was inconsistent. It delayed crucial survival skills. It had no respectable alternative path for kids who shouldn't be shinobi, and it depended heavily on outside factors to create high-quality outcomes. The Boruto-era curriculum is closer to optimal for a peaceful, modern society. Broader education, earlier fundamentals, higher standards, real flexibility. But peace creates its own blind spots, and the curriculum has to deliberately address them. So what would an actually optimal academy curriculum look like, using everything Konoha has learned across both eras? First, add controlled adversity. Longer scenario drills integrated into the final year, multi-day survival exercises, rotating objectives, limited supplies, and simulated enemy pressure. The goal isn't cruelty. It's giving students a safe taste of fear, fatigue, and failure before their first real crisis, so their resolve isn't something they discover on a mission. Second, make ethics and history a real course, using Konoha's own painful case studies to practice moral reasoning. Third, build formal support for students who are struggling so problems don't fester. And fourth, teach scientific ninja tools directly, how they work, how to counter them, and when using them crosses the line from smart preparation into dangerous dependence. If you can also fold in exchange programs and community service, you reinforce cooperation and remind students what power is for: serving people. Do that, and you get a curriculum that produces capable shinobi, ethical shinobi, resilient shinobi, and also produces civilians who can thrive, which is exactly what a peace-era village should want. So my final verdict is this: Naruto's academy was optimal only if you accept an ugly optimization target. Minimum training, maximum output. Let the world brutalize them into readiness. Boruto's academy is a better designed school, but peace makes its own blind spots, and the curriculum has to intentionally teach resilience and responsibility in a world where hardship isn't constant. The best academy isn't the one that makes the toughest kids. It's the one that makes kids capable of facing reality without losing their humanity. Naruto's generation learned that by living through chaos. Boruto's generation has to learn it before chaos arrives. And if you still think the Naruto-era curriculum was fine, ask yourself this: if you were 12, would you rather learn tree walking and water walking before your first mission, or after your first near-death experience? Because Konoha already answered that question once. The only reason they changed the curriculum is because they finally admitted the old answer cost too much. If the village wants the next generation to be better, this is where it starts, in the lessons they learn before the world tests them.